Take me as your concubine, she whispered, her voice soft but filled with urgency. The words hung in the air, vibrating like an echo across the vast, unfamiliar landscape. The human before her, a young man with wide, startled eyes, stared at her in disbelief. His eyes darted to the sky, then back to the woman who was standing before him. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. A being with lavender skin, delicate silver eyes, and a glow that seemed to emanate from her very being. The stars above twinkled in a way that mirrored the soft shine on her skin. She was beautiful in a way he couldn't fully understand, a mix of alien elegance and raw, untamed power. What? The human stammered, his mouth dry. He had heard legends of creatures from other worlds, but never had he imagined one would ask this. My name is Lulira, she continued, her eyes piercing through him, and I need your help. I need you to take me as your concubine. He took a step back, trying to process the strange encounter. His mind raced. Could this be real? Or was it some form of trickery, an illusion, or a dream? But the feel of the cool night breeze, the distant hum of unfamiliar creatures in the wild, told him this was no fantasy. I don't understand. Why me? I'm just a human. Her eyes softened, and she lowered her head, as though considering how to best explain. The air seemed to grow heavier around them, as if the weight of an ancient responsibility pressed down on her shoulders. You don't know me, but I know you, Lulira said, her voice almost hypnotic now. You are the one who can help me, the one who can save my daughter. His heart skipped a beat. Daughter? He asked, his voice cracking with confusion. The woman before him was as alien as they come. The thought of a daughter was so foreign. It was as though he was being pulled into a world he couldn't comprehend. Lulira stepped closer, her presence overwhelming. She was so beautiful, yet there was a sadness in her eyes that he couldn't ignore. Yes, she whispered. My daughter, Lira. She is in grave danger, and only through you can I save her. But, in return, I need you. You see, the laws of my people are not like yours. The survival of my child depends on a bond one can only form with a human, a bond that must be created through love. The human blinked, feeling both intrigued and terrified at the same time. Love? I don't even know you. Lulira smiled faintly, her silver eyes gleaming. Not in the way you think, human. In the way that transcends what you know. A bond that goes beyond physical, beyond your understanding of love. A bond between our souls, intertwined across time, space, and galaxies. There was a long pause before he could speak again. He had no words, just a feeling deep inside that something extraordinary, something beyond words, was happening. And if I don't? Her expression turned serious, her eyes filled with a deep sorrow. If you do not take me, you will do my daughter. My people will perish, and the galaxy will fall into chaos. He swallowed hard. So, you're asking me to? I'm asking you to save us all, she interrupted, her voice now pleading, and in return, I will give you everything you desire. I will offer you the knowledge of the universe, the secrets of time itself. I will give you a life you never imagined, and you will never regret it. But you must choose now. The wind seemed to die down, and the stars above them grew even more brilliant. The young man's mind raced. What was happening? Why was he even considering this? He was just a human, an ordinary man. And yet, something about this alien woman felt real, like a cosmic force pulling him toward her. With a shaky breath, he whispered, What do you need from me? Exactly? Lulira stepped forward and gently placed her hand over his. It was warm, comforting, and yet strange. I need your trust, your strength, and yes, your love, as unexplainable as it may seem. But I also need your protection. I have enemies, powerful enemies who will stop at nothing to take my daughter and destroy me. She turned away slightly, gazing into the vast sky. We are not the only ones here, she murmured. There are others, alien beings, much darker and more dangerous than you could imagine. They will come for us. And when they do, only you will be able to protect us. The young man didn't know what to say. He was just an ordinary guy. How could he stand up against aliens? How could he protect anyone, especially someone like her? Before he could ask another question, a soft sound echoed from the distance. It was a haunting melody, unlike anything he had ever heard. It seemed to call to Lulira, drawing her gaze toward the horizon. "They are coming," she said urgently, gripping his hand tighter. "I need your help now. Please, I beg you." Her plea cut through the confusion in his mind. The music that had just echoed through the night seemed to fade, replaced by a growing, ominous hum. The air thickened, and the stars above them seemed to shimmer in a strange, unsettling way. Something was coming. Something dangerous. "Who's coming?" he asked, voice tense. Lulira's eyes flashed with a cold fury. "My enemies. They will stop at nothing. The ones who want to take my daughter, destroy her, and destroy my people. They are known as the Zailer, a race of ruthless conquerors from the darkest corner of the galaxy." He could see the tension in her face now, the vulnerability hidden beneath her royal facade. She wasn't just asking for his help. She was pleading for her life, and the life of her daughter, Alira. He stood there, unsure of what he could even do. But in his heart, a spark of something ignited. The call for adventure. The call to fight for something greater than himself. "All right," he said, his voice steady now, a sense of resolve growing within him. "I'll help you. I don't know how, but I'll try." Lulira turned toward him, a faint smile playing at her lips. "You do not know what this means, human," she whispered. "You have just bound yourself to an ancient promise. From this moment on, you are no longer just a human. You are part of something much, much bigger." With those words, a strange energy pulsed between them. He felt it in his chest, a connection that went beyond reason and understanding. It was as if the very stars themselves had woven their fates together. And then, without another word, she turned to face the horizon. The stars above grew brighter, and the sky seemed to shimmer as a dark shadow stretched across the landscape, signaling the beginning of a new chapter in both their lives. As the darkness stretched over the land, the young man, still reeling from the alien woman's plea, felt an odd sense of determination settle in. The air hummed with an unseen force, a strange and subtle energy that made his skin tingle, as though the world itself was shifting. He followed Lulira, her lavender form glowing like a beacon in the night. Her presence was both comforting and unnerving. How could someone so beautiful, so otherworldly, need him, a simple human, for anything? And yet, the urgency in her voice was undeniable. There was something deep within her, a raw truth that made him feel like he had no choice but to trust her. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice low as he caught up with her, trying to keep his footing on the uneven terrain. Lulira's silver eyes glanced back at him, her face still serene, but there was a flicker of something else, something hidden beneath her calm exterior. "To where my daughter is," she answered simply, her gaze shifting to the distant horizon. The night sky had taken on an otherworldly glow, and the stars seemed closer than ever, almost as if they were watching them. She spoke as though she had lived for millennia, her voice filled with the weight of experience and power. "My enemies are many," she said after a moment, "but there is one, in particular, I fear the most, Zorath, the leader of the Zailer. His power is unmatched, and his obsession with my daughter is relentless. He believes that Alira holds the key to controlling the universe itself." The key? The young man felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had heard whispers of powerful beings, but nothing that would make him believe one of them could hold the entire universe in their grasp. Lulira nodded solemnly, her eyes darkening. "My people, the Lyrians, have the ability to manipulate time and space, something the Zailer crave. But it is my daughter who holds the true power. The Zailer believe that by taking her, they will unlock the ability to rewrite history itself. They are ruthless, and they will not stop until they have what they want." They walked in silence for a while, the weight of her words sinking in. The young man's mind raced. A normal life was the furthest thing from his mind now. What had started as a chance encounter had turned into a fight for survival, against enemies beyond his comprehension. Lulira stopped suddenly, her body tensing. Her senses were heightened, sharper than his own, and he could feel the shift in the air before he even saw the first signs of trouble. The ground beneath them vibrated, faint but growing stronger, as if something was moving beneath the surface. "Stay close," Lulira commanded, her voice cold and serious now. "They are near." From the shadows, figures began to emerge. Their shapes were distorted, flickering between the solid and the intangible, their movements like flashes of dark lightning. The Zailer. The young man's heart pounded in his chest. These beings were not of his world. Their skin was black as coal, their eyes glowing like molten lava, and their bodies radiated an unnatural energy that sent a shiver of fear down his spine. There were 5 of them, each towering over him, their dark forms a stark contrast to Lulira's glowing presence. "Leave now, Lyrian," one of the Zailer hissed, his voice like gravel scraping against stone. "Your daughter is ours. Surrender her, or die." Lulira stood tall, unfazed by their threats. Her silver eyes blazed with an inner fire as she spoke. "You are nothing but parasites, Zailer. You will never have her." The young man took a step forward, his heart racing. He wanted to act, to fight, but he had no idea how to even begin. He was outmatched in every way, human against these powerful, alien creatures. But then, without warning, Lulira raised her hand, her fingers glowing with an ethereal light. A pulse of energy shot out from her palm, a shockwave that sent the Zailer flying backward. The force of the blast tore through the air, and the ground beneath them cracked open, splitting in jagged lines. The Zailer recoiled, stunned by the power of her attack. But their leader, Zorath, stepped forward, his eyes narrowing with fury. "You think you can stand against us, Lyrian?" His voice was dripping with disdain, but beneath it, there was a hint of fear. Lulira didn't flinch. "I stand against you because I must. My daughter's life is worth more than your existence." The young man watched in awe as Lulira faced down the Zailer with a strength he couldn't fathom. It was clear that she was no ordinary being. She was a force of nature, a being whose power transcended anything he could have imagined. And yet, despite her strength, there was a vulnerability in her eyes, a mother's love, a protector's resolve. As the battle raged on, he realized something crucial. He wasn't just a bystander. He had chosen to help. He had chosen to fight. And somehow, despite the odds, he had to find a way to protect Lulira and her daughter. "Take me as your concubine." Lulira's words echoed in his mind, and for the first time, he understood what she truly meant. It wasn't just about physical attraction or some strange, otherworldly connection. It was about a bond, a deep, ancient bond that linked their fates together. He wasn't just a human anymore. He was a part of something far greater. And whether he was ready or not, his life had changed forever. The Zailer were relentless. They didn't stop after the initial attack. They regrouped, their bodies flickering like shadows, moving too quickly for him to keep up. He knew it was only a matter of time before they overpowered them. "Lulira!" he shouted, panic rising in his chest. "What do we do now?" Her silver eyes met his with a calm that startled him. "We fight," she said simply, as though the answer were as natural as breathing. "And we survive." The air around them seemed to crackle with energy, and the stars above flickered once more, as though they were waiting for the next move in this cosmic battle. The young man swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the responsibility now placed on his shoulders. But there was no turning back. The Zailer leader, Zorath, snarled, his eyes burning with fury. "You cannot escape, Lyrian. This is your end." Lulira's eyes narrowed, and her hand moved again. But this time, the energy she summoned was different. It was darker, more dangerous. The air around them grew thick with tension. "You are wrong," Lulira said, her voice colder now. "This is where your end begins." The ground shook violently as Lulira's power surged through the landscape. The Zailer recoiled, but it was clear they weren't giving up. A deadly game had just begun, one that would determine the fate of Lulira's daughter, her people, and the future of the universe itself. The young man's heart raced, but his resolve solidified. He wasn't just a human anymore. He was bound to something bigger. And whatever happened next, he would stand with Lulira. He would fight. For Alliare. For the universe. For them. The battle intensified as the Zailer closed in. Zorath, their leader, stood at the forefront, eyes glowing with a burning intensity. His immense power radiated from him in dark waves, twisting the air into something heavy and oppressive. Lylira's energy crackled around her, her presence unwavering. But the weight of the enemy forces was becoming too much. "Do not let them near me," she commanded, her voice carrying an authority that both terrified and empowered him. "Protect Lira with your life." Her words were a command he could no longer ignore, even though the reality of what he was about to do felt far beyond his understanding. He had never faced a being like Zorath before, and yet, something inside him shifted. The universe had chosen him for a reason, even if he didn't fully grasp it yet. As the Zailer advanced, the young man saw his chance. He had to protect them. He had to fight. "How do I fight them?" he yelled at Lylira, desperation creeping into his voice. Lylira's silver eyes glinted with something unexpected, something like hope. "The power you need is within you, human," she said, her words calm and certain. "Trust in it. Trust in your bond with me." He hesitated, glancing at the alien creatures surrounding them. But there was no time to second-guess. His hand instinctively reached for the strange energy that seemed to pulse within him now. A connection to Lylira, to her daughter, to everything that had brought him here. A surge of power shot through his veins, and suddenly, the world around him felt different. It was as though the very fabric of reality had bent to his will. His senses heightened. Everything became clearer, sharper. He could feel the energy of the Zailer before they even moved. He could anticipate their every action. With a shout, he thrust his hand forward. A blast of light, brighter than the stars above, erupted from his palm, knocking two of the Zailer backward. Their bodies slammed into the earth with a resounding crack. But Zorath, unfazed, only sneered. "You think you can stand against the might of the Zailer?" Zorath spat, his voice filled with venom. But the young man, now filled with the confidence of a bond he didn't fully understand, didn't falter. Instead, he focused on Lylira, on her. She was the key. Her power flowed through him now, the connection between them unshakable. Lylira moved in perfect harmony with him, her own energy fusing with his. Together, they formed a barrier of light, a shield of cosmic force that enveloped them both. The Zailer screamed in frustration as their attacks met the barrier and were deflected by the combined might of human and Lyrian. "I will not allow you to take her," Lylira growled, her eyes narrowing on Zorath. "You have no idea what you are up against." Zorath stepped forward, his eyes blazing with rage. "You will die for your insolence, Lyrian." He raised his hand, dark energy swirling around his fingertips. The ground beneath them began to tremble violently, and cracks appeared in the sky itself. For a moment, the young man felt the overwhelming weight of what they were facing. Could they truly win against such a power? The universe seemed to be pulling them toward this moment. There was no going back. Then, with a deep breath, he steadied himself. "We're in this together," he whispered, not just to Lylira, but to the universe itself. "Let's finish this." Lylira smiled, just a flicker of a smile, but it carried a world of meaning. "Then we fight until the end." Together, they unleashed a devastating wave of energy. The air trembled, and the Zailer screeched as they were pushed back, their dark power dissipating in the face of the united force between the human and the alien. Zorath roared, his form flickering as if he could barely maintain his hold on his power. "No, you cannot defeat me. I am invincible." "You are nothing," Lylira said, her voice now full of finality. "You are a shadow, a forgotten relic, and today you die." With one final push, the barrier of light exploded outward, engulfing Zorath and the remaining Zailer. The young man felt the shockwave in his bones, but it was quickly followed by a profound sense of peace. The fight was over. As the dust settled and the last remnants of the Zailer's dark power disintegrated into nothingness, the young man collapsed to his knees, exhaustion taking over. His mind raced, trying to comprehend what had just happened. What had he become? Lylira knelt beside him, her expression softening. "You did it," she said, her voice gentle now, almost tender. "You protected us. You saved my daughter." He looked at her, still trying to catch his breath. I didn't do this alone. Lilira smiled, her silver eyes warm with gratitude. No, you did not. But you gave your strength, your heart, and that was enough. Together, we are unstoppable. He nodded, still trying to process everything. The enormity of what had just occurred was sinking in, but one thing was clear. His life had changed forever. He wasn't just a human anymore. He was a part of something far greater than himself. Where's your daughter? He asked, his voice shaky but full of concern. Lilira turned her gaze to the horizon, and there, in a secluded area just beyond the battle's aftermath, stood a figure. A young girl with hair that shimmered like the stars, her eyes glowing with a soft, ethereal light. She was watching them. Zailer, Lilira whispered, standing and walking toward her daughter. My heart, my hope. The young man stood as well, following them. Zailer's eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, he saw it, the deep, ancient wisdom in her gaze. She smiled at him, and in that moment, he knew that his life would never be the same. You did well, human, Zailer said softly, her voice like a song. The young man smiled, unsure of what to say, but knowing that he had been a part of something far beyond his understanding. The universe had chosen him, and he had chosen to fight, and in the end, they had all won. Lilira turned to him once more, her face glowing with pride. We are safe, for now, but there are more challenges ahead, more enemies, more tests, and I will need your strength, your heart again. He nodded, his resolve firm. I'm with you. Whatever comes next, we face it together. And so, beneath the stars that had witnessed their victory, the young man, the alien princess, and her daughter walked into the unknown future. United, bound by a bond stronger than anything they had ever known. Together, they would face whatever came next, and no force in the universe could tear them apart.